Nothing compares to knowing Christ. Philippians 3 verses 1 to 9. There are moments in life when we realize what truly matters. We discover that some things we held onto don't have the value we once thought. In Philippians 3 verses 1 to 9, Paul has one of those moments, except his realization didn't just change his priorities, it transformed his entire life. This passage teaches us that real joy, real righteousness, and real purpose come only from Jesus Christ. In verse 1, Paul begins by saying, "Rejoice in the Lord." Notice, he doesn't say rejoice in your success, your progress, or your spiritual performance. Joy rooted in circumstances rises and falls, but joy rooted in the Lord is steady and secure. Paul says this reminder is safe for us. Why? Because when we forget where joy comes from, we start chasing it in the wrong places. We start measuring our worth by what we achieve instead of who Christ is. True joy is not earned, it's received. It comes from the Lord. In verses 2 to 3, Paul warns the church about those who insist salvation depends on human effort, specifically the Judaizers who said Gentiles must be circumcised to be saved. Paul calls their teaching dangerous because it takes people's eyes off Christ and puts them on themselves. Then he says, "We are the true circumcision." Who are we? Those who worship by the Spirit, boast in Christ, and put no confidence in the flesh. In other words, true Christianity isn't about what you do for God. It's about what God has done for you. In verses 4 to 6, Paul says, "If anyone has reason to brag about religious accomplishments, it's me." He lists his credentials. Born into the right family, kept the law flawlessly, zealous, disciplined, respected. If righteousness were a competition, Paul was the champion. But here's the shock. Paul discovered that even his best wasn't enough. All the things he trusted in for salvation were powerless to save him. In verses 7 to 8, Paul says something radical. "Whatever was to my gain, I now consider loss." Everything he once treasured, his status, reputation, achievements, became nothing compared to knowing Christ. He even calls it rubbish. Not simply not important, but garbage. Worthless. Why? Because anything that keeps you from fully trusting Christ is not just unhelpful, it's dangerous. Paul isn't saying these things were evil. He's saying they were empty compared to the treasure of knowing Jesus. Church, hear this. The greatest treasure of the Christian life is not heaven, not blessings, not miracles. It is Christ himself. To know him, to walk with him, to belong to him. That is the surpassing worth. In verse 9, Paul sums it up beautifully. "Not having a righteousness of my own, but that which is through faith in Christ." He realized salvation is not God plus my good works, Christ plus my effort, grace plus performance. It is Christ alone. Our righteousness doesn't come from what we do for God, but from what Christ did on the cross. He lived the life we couldn't live, died the death we deserved, and gives us his righteousness as a gift. Paul invites us to examine our lives and ask, what am I trusting in? Is it your good behavior? Your reputation? Your ministry? Your spiritual track record? Your church involvement? All of these are good, but none of them can save. Only Jesus can. And when you truly know him, when you see the beauty and worth of Christ, everything else fades in comparison. So today, rejoice in the Lord. Lay down every false confidence. Treasure Christ above all else. And rest in the righteousness that comes by faith. Because in the end, nothing, absolutely nothing, compares to knowing Christ.